praying, and I thank God for this time together on Sunday afternoon, for your blessing, Lord, as you speak to us from your throne, exactly the words you once said for such a time as this. We come and rejoice in that. We're in a very unique hour in history is true. One of the things that we must face, and this is going to have to be faced by every human being that lives on planet Earth at this hour and this time, we must deal with the reality that we are accountable and that the Father created an eternity past. It was his intention to create a timeline, or I call a continuum of human experience. A human experience continuum was created. So when he created Adam and Eve, he was thinking from eternity past, I'm going to create the heavens and the earth. I'm going to create Adam and Eve. These events are going to happen, but we're all accountable on this continuum. We're at a point right now where there is going to be a wake-up call that is going to come out to every human being living on earth, that regardless of your belief system and how sincere you are in your belief system, if you're in actual counter, if your belief system is counter to the truth that comes from the heart of the Father God, not a truth I define, his truth, which he is speaking from, his Bible, his word, he's given us the truth, he has expressed it through the Bible. You can argue with that, you can debate that, you can disagree with that, it won't change it. You can go to the top 50-story building and stand there and say, I do not believe in gravity. As a matter of fact, I think your concept of this thing called gravity is your reality. It's not my reality. I don't believe gravity exists. I'm really incensed and I'm really offended by your commitment to this thing called gravity, because that is not my reality. That's your reality. I don't believe it. And besides that, I don't see it. I don't see gravity. I look around, I don't see it. You're telling me this thing called gravity exists. I don't believe it. I sincerely don't believe it. And here's my belief system that defies gravity, and I'm very sincere in my conviction. I love my conviction. You jump off that 50-story building, and all of a sudden, you find out what is true and what is not true. The fact of the matter is, every human being is going to have to deal with this. There are many individuals that are extremely intelligent. I listen to some people. I listened to Francis Schaeffer. Wow, this man was brilliant. What a brilliant mind. Inferior, when I listen to Francis Schaeffer's, what a brilliant mind. The most brilliant minds in the world cannot defy the reality of God. Nor can they defy the fact that they will be held accountable for what they do with God. What you do about the Bible matters. And then there are those that are a part of religious systems and their convictions within those religious systems. The structures within those religious systems are so profound. The buildings that they sit in are amazing. The art and the architecture are impressive, but they have no greater value than a pile of dirt if they're dedicated to something that is not true, and it is not God, and it is not biblical. I'm going to say this as well. There are those that are committed to the Bible under their own interpretations. They've taken the Bible in the hands, and they're committed to the Bible according to the interpretation of their religious standards. You're being held accountable. I don't care how sincere you are in your conviction. If the conviction is wrong, you're wrong. And we're going to have to deal with that. And one of the things we're going to talk about here over the next couple of weeks is our Hebrew brothers and sisters. And you are brothers and sisters. You are of the Hebrew family. So are we. We are of the Hebrew family. And there are those that have come through Abraham's son, Ishmael, and they claim Abraham as a father. And there are those in Israel and our Hebrew friends who claim Abraham as a father. And then we have these individuals that declare Yeshua HaMashiach, a Jewish carpenter, as the Messiah. And through him, the believers in him have a connection back to Abraham. We're going to talk about that over these next few weeks. And I will dare say it's not going to be very comfortable, because we're going to have to face the reality is that no matter how violently we want to believe we're right, no matter how persuasive we are in our argument, no matter how powerful we are in our debate, no matter how sincere we are, if we're wrong, we're wrong. And I believe what I'm hearing in my heart is, if we're wrong, we need to face that, and we need to ask the question, if I am wrong, what is right? And more than any other time, we need to know what's right. So what I'm sharing with you right now is that from eternity past to eternity future, there is a continuum. And if you look at this slide, what you notice is there's a couple of gaps. First of all, we have the creation of the heavens and the earth. According to Bereshit, chapter 1, Genesis chapter 1, we understand that God created the heavens and the earth. So we have the creation of the heavens and the earth, and then he created Adam and Eve. That happened according to the research done by Man Pt1, and I'm going to share a little bit more about Man Pt1 and the Chabad.org webpage, where I got a lot of the information that we're going to look at here today. Adam and Eve were created 5,784 years ago. Well, where do they get that? That is the creation of Adam and Eve, 5,784 years ago. So there was a gap in the continuum. There's a break, and the break came because of sin. Adam and Eve sinned, and therefore that continuum, that line, had a break. Then the line had to be reinstituted, put back into progress, and we had the further on of this line. Then the next thing that happened was the crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus. Jesus was born, he was crucified, he died, he rose again. This Jewish rabbi who put himself out there as the Son of God, the Son of Man. And another break happened in history. Humanity was significantly impacted by what happened. All of humanity was impacted by what happened to Adam and Eve. All of us were affected. When Jesus came to this earth, lived, died, and rose again, and ascended to his Father, another significant change happened for humanity. Then we pick up the continuum. Now we got the continuum going. And then there is a promise that Jesus will return. And when he returns, there's another break, because how we have lived up until this point is going to take on a whole new dimension when he returns. As we continue on that continuum of eternal glory, as we're going towards his paradise restored. Because when he created the heavens and earth, he created a beautiful, perfect paradise. And we've been living these last 6,000 years, basically, under the effects of Adam and Eve. But that original heart of the Father, to have this glorious, eternal paradise, will be restored. So there are 8 significant events that have happened in the history of humanity, and these events have affected every one of us. Number 1 was Adam and Eve's sin. That affected every human being, and we're still suffering from that effect. Number 2 was the renovation of the earth with water and Noah's Ark. That affected all of humanity. Then we have the Tower of Babel, and up until the Tower of Babel, everyone spoke one single language. My personal opinion, it was Hebrew. And Nimrod built the tower. But you know what one of the main purposes of the Tower of Babel, one of the reasons why the Tower of Babel was created was to create a portal through which satanic demons could come to earth. It was an opening up of the dark world. Nimrod, in one respect, was the father of the occult. The Tower of Babel's actual intention was the desire of these people. They wanted to create, number 1, they wanted to create a paradise without God. Interesting what humanists say. Humanists want a world, one of their mottos, the Portland Humanist Society, one of their mottos is, and I'm probably not quoting it correctly, but it's something to the effect of goodness without God. That's part of their motto. A paradise without God. That's what Nimrod wanted to create. He wanted to create a paradise without God. And actually what he wanted to do was build a tower so high, in one respect, that it was so high that theoretically you could climb to the top of the Tower of Babel, get to the top, look at heaven's gate, step from the top of the Tower of Babel into heaven and go, we got here and we didn't need Jesus to get here. When they built that Tower of Babel, that was part of what was part of the motivation, was they wanted to stand up, put their fist in God's face and say, look, we got here by human effort. We didn't need you, and we didn't need the cross of Calvary. And what they also recognized is, they recognized as long as we're united with one common language, we can accomplish anything. And God looked down and said to the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, looked down and said, you know what? He said, it says clearly, now nothing will be impossible for them. He said, now nothing will be impossible. So what are we going to do? Let's separate them by language. And then they lost the unity. What's happened over the last 60 years, 6,000 years? Ever since the Tower of Babel, we are coming back full circle to the Tower of Babel time, when demons were running rampant, the doors were thrown wide open to invite demon activity, satanic activity, wide open. And what does the earth have? Fundamentally, we have one language, and it's English. Anywhere you go, am I right? All pilots have to speak English. You got to speak English. You're not going to fly into United States space if you don't speak English. Yeah. You're going to speak English. And you know, my experience in Kenya and some of the other places I've traveled, they speak English. So we are closer now to a universal language that pretty much everybody understands. I mean, you can go almost anywhere, and you're going to find people that speak English. In Japan, there were people that spoke English. Well, Kenya, I mean, I think it's their national language. I mean, Uganda, you speak English. With that capacity, what's being put back into our hands, he said, now nothing will be impossible. What does that mean? Well, I think in one sense, theoretically, build a missile that could actually fly to a place that does exist, called heaven. I'm just theorizing. Theoretically, you could do that because it's a real place. It does exist somewhere. I don't know how far away. It could be millions of light years away. I don't know how far away heaven is. But I think the Lord says nothing will be impossible. And when you add AI and you add all of these things, we are rushing towards a place now that God is saying, we're going to call a stop to it. I'm just saying, Tower of Babel. The birth, death, burial, and the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ changed the world. No matter who you are, the entire world changed when Jesus came. Whether you're Muslim or a Hebrew, a Jewish person, whether you're an American citizen, whether you live in Australia, all of humanity was affected by the birth, death, and burial of this individual called the Lord Jesus Christ. Unescapable. You cannot erase that out of your society. You cannot be a communist in Russia and try to erase that out of human history. You can't do it. He lived, he lived, he lived. We know he lived. Jesus will return because he promised he would. There will be a renovation again of the earth, not with water, but with fire. There will be a renovation of the earth. This will happen. There will be a 1,000-year reign of Jesus with his saints. There will be the perfect eternal plan of God restored, paradise restored. These, obviously, we could take this time continuum, and you could find there's millions of points that affected us. You know, the discovery of the polio vaccine affected humanity. I mean, there have been, the Reformation affected humanity. There have been events that have affected us. But these are I just went to the highest level of things that affected every human being's life was affected by these things and will be affected by these things. I want to build on some things that are true. Now, not everyone is going to be, you know, let's say 1, 2, and 3, people could say, I agree with that. Number 4, I don't know so much. Of course, I know nothing about the future. But what I'm trying to lay here are there some facts that affect all human beings, and every human being has to reconcile themselves to these facts. So I do want to give, I want to honor, give much of the research that I'm going to be sharing today, we're going to get into. And this presentation was accomplished with, and thanks to the work of Mattis Cantor, published online by Chabad.org. We desire to honor Mattis Cantor and Chabad.org with all Jewish people throughout the world, because we're going to talk a fair amount about where are we at on the continuum. Where specifically are Jewish people at on the continuum? Where do you fit into this picture that we all agree there wasn't Adam and Eve? Do we all agree? Whether we're Islamic, whether we're Hebrews, whether we're Hebrews in Israel, we can all agree there was an Adam and Eve. There was a creation and there was a creator. We can all agree on that. Yeah. So he created a timeline continuum. We're going to talk about where we're at on that continuum, where we're all where are we at? Where am I at on that continuum? Where are you at on that continuum? So from this perspective, there are two groups of people fundamentally. People who have an ancestral Jewish lineage and who also follow the commandments and teachings found in the Torah. We have those individuals that they know they have Jewish heritage. And within that group of individuals, there are those that dedicate themselves to following the commandments and the teachings found in the Torah. Then we have this other group, those who do not have bloodline ancestral Jewish heritage, and they do not adhere to the traditions, customs, and laws found in the Torah. They're not living their lives by all of the mandates found in the Torah. So what we really end up with is really, from a Jewish perspective, we got two groups. Either you're a Jew or you're a Gentile. Either or. It's one or the other. Okay? So what does that mean for us living today? When we talk about ancestral heritage or American citizenship in America is based on the land of the United States, or where were you born in the United States? Or have you gone through the process of becoming a citizen? So citizens in America specifically are people that were born here. So the question is, the first question you're going to get asked to validate you being a citizen is, where were you born? What city, what state? Okay, I was born in this city, this state, you're an American citizen. All right. In Italy, it's not land, it's blood. In Italy, citizenship is based on blood relationships. Who is your grandfather or your great-grandfather? It's not land, it's blood. So that's why I could theoretically have dual citizenship. I really could. I could have dual citizenship with both the United States and Italy. And there would be some benefits to doing that. For one thing, it'd be just kind of cool to have an Italian passport. That would be kind of cool. But a Jewish person is either they're either of a Jewish family by birth on the mother's side, or a convert who has completed the required steps, and they're significant. To become a Jew, conversion, you have to go through a very extensive process. There's at least 10, 12 different steps you've got to go through. But if you will go through those steps, and they are certified, and you're certified that you have gone through those steps, then you are a Jew. And you can pull it out and say whether you look like it or you appear to be Jewish or not. You can pull out your authorization card, or I'm not sure exactly what they carry, but you can say, I am a Jew, and I have a right to go to Israel and live in Israel. Aliyah, I can live there because I am a Jew, either because of my mother's bloodline or because I've gone through the process of conversion to the Jewish religion. So this will become important. So I want to bring a little clarity. We see here in the Bible references to the word Jew. That points out to those of the Jewish religion. Oftentimes in the Bible, you're going to hear this word Jew, and when they say that, they're specifically relating to the Jewish leaders, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. So it says here in John 5:10, so the Jews were saying to the man who was cured, it is the Sabbath, and it is not permissible for you to carry your pallet. So he's talking specifically about the leaders, okay, the religious leaders. And I think this is important because what we find in every faith group, no matter who they are, whether they be Mormon or they be Muslim, or in the Jewish tradition, or whether they be Christian. What we realize is you have nominal believers in all of these groups. You have people who say, I am of this religion, but what you realize is you've got the nominal ones down here that just sort of do what they're supposed to do, or not, maybe not, they just claim the title. And then you have the ultra-religious ones that are really, really living out their mandate. And so in a sense, what we see here is this situation. So in Israel at the time of Yeshua, you had those individuals who were a part of the ruling class, the religious ruling class, and they were up on top of things. And then you have the other individuals over here that were just trying to get by. Are you a Jew? Yeah, I'm a Jew, but I'm just trying to feed my family. I'm not hyper religious. I'm just trying to get by. So we have a couple of groups. So again, just for clarity's sake, a few more things I want to share. Often we hear the phrase, the Jewish race, or we'll hear the white race or black race. We'll hear about race. Well, that concept, the concept of race that we know today is only 500 years old. It's only 500 years old. The term race was first used in the 16th century. In general, it was synonymous with type, sort, or kind. Prior to this, people were identified by wealth or social standing, which had nothing to do with physical appearance. It had nothing to do with physical appearance. The concept of identifying people or separating people by physical characteristics, the color of your skin, and that's really the classic key differentiation. How people got separated by race was because of the color of their skin. We have the Caucasian race. Why are they called Caucasians? And why do we identify them as Caucasian? Primarily because they're white. They have white skin. They came from the Caucasus region of Russia. So this concept of race is actually, the modern concept of race is an illusion. When we look at somebody and say, oh, you look Swedish, or we look at somebody and say, you look Italian, what are we doing? We're looking at their physical features and then trying to plug them into a race. This is all groundwork. I know it's a little tedious, but this is groundwork because we need to understand. When we get down to talking about some things, we're going to talk about that. We got to have this background to understand that this idea of separating people by their physical appearance is only 500 years old. So the reality is, going on here with clarity, there is a genus called the family or species of human beings. We are all human beings. We're of the genus human. We're human beings. All of us. Just like canines. You have the dogs, the wolves, all the varieties of dogs, all the varieties of foxes, wolves, coyotes. They're canine genus. So I just want to point out the fact, what I'm wanting to point out here is that we're all human beings. I don't care what color skin you have or where your family was born. Separating people by appearance is an illusion to kind of categorize each other by that. We're all human beings. I don't care where you come from. And realizing that at the core of the Marxist theory, is you have to have the oppressed and the oppressors. It relies heavily on racism. Racism becomes very convenient because you're able to separate people. The white people are bad. They're the oppressors. Anyone else who is not white is the oppressed. You have to rise up against the oppressors, and they're easy to identify. You can identify the oppressors because they're white. That is key to Marxism.
Even the Jewish have broke down because they said, oh, did anything good come out of Nazareth? Or you're from some area.
Nazareth, one of the definitions of the word Nazareth is little. So it's just this little tiny bird, you know. It was like a one camel stall, bird. And so couldn't a good thing come out of there? I really think this is important because what happens is, what happens in the world around us, human beings at this point tend to rally around their race. I'm going to hang out with people that look like me. I like people that look like me. I don't trust people who don't look like me. This is so fundamental to the world we're living in. And again, taking this on over into the Middle East is saying, I can look at this person and know that they are Arabic. I know they're Arabic. I can tell by the way they look. I look at this person and I know they're Jewish. I can tell by the way they look. This person's not Jewish, not Arabic. I can tell by the way they look. We're separating each other by appearance. God created human beings. We're all a part of this family. And what has separated us is an illusion that has been forced upon us by a society, by a system, especially the Marxist system, that has to have oppressed and oppressors. We're all one family. This is a starting point for us to understand. The paradigm that we have lived under is a lie. In modern Jewish tradition versus the non-Jewish tradition when it comes to dating, because we're going to talk about dating here in a little bit. And I think you're going to find this, as I have, a very fascinating study. And this is where we really rely on Mr. Cantor's research. Not only Mr. Cantor, but also Rock Island Books, totally different, from a totally different perspective. But he's done a lot of research in time. And so we're going to talk a little bit about time. And I think you're going to find this interesting. And there's a reason why we're going to talk about this. Because we're going to begin to understand we are more alike than we've ever realized before. We have far more in common. So in the Jewish tradition, we have a sacred year and a civil year. So there's actually two different calendars. So this is the year 5784 based on the civil year. Okay, civil year starts in September or October. It's the month of Teshri, and that's where the civil calendar starts. That's where the marking of the beginning of Adam and Eve goes back to 5784, and so we have the civil calendar. So it gets a little confusing, like what month are we in? Like right now we're in the month of Sivan. That's the month we're in right now, and that's based on within the sacred year. And look at the sacred year starts in March and April, and all of the festivals that happen throughout the year are based on the sacred year. So Passover, Shavuot, Pentecost, Shavuot, the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, and the Tabernacle of Time of Tabernacles. All of those festivals are based on the sacred year. So sometimes it's a little, what are we talking about? Civil year or sacred year? So we're going to try to break that down a little bit. All right, and then realizing within these calendars there is no zero. There is no zero. Everything starts on 1. So Adam and Eve were created on day 1. And then you go forward 5,784 years and you get today. But it's important for us to understand, because we have to understand who we are as human beings, that we're not separated by race. There is no better race or not better race. That does not exist. We are all human beings. How we fit into this calendar and how we fit into God's time. So on the non-Jewish years, we say BC. Before Christ. Well, for the Jewish folks, it's before the Common Era. Now notice one thing. There's a break that happened. A break happened. So we call it before Christ, or in the year of our Lord, Anno Domini, forward. Because there's a break. Well, our Hebrew brothers and sisters, to deal with that break, call what is before the break BCE, before the Common Era. And what comes after is called the Common Era, or CE. We say, and then of course this calendar was adopted in 600 AD, Pope Gregory. So we have the Gregorian calendar, and that's what we live under right now, is the Gregorian calendar. So when we come to the civil calendar, we have La Shana Tova, which is the head of the year, and that's the first month, and that comes based on a lunar calendar, not a solar calendar. We live on our Hebrew calendar is under the lunar, not solar. And then just by the way, on our Hebrew calendar, I say our Hebrew calendar, and there's a good reason why I'm saying that. There are not 365 days, there are 360 days. So when we do our calculations, we have to remember especially when we look at our Hebrew calendar, we have to remember calculations are not done on 365, they're done on 360. Okay, so that kind of helps sort out some of this creation. All right, now when we look at the genealogies, and again, genealogies are very important in our Hebrew context. Who is your father? Who is your mother? What is your lineage? A lot of time was spent in the Hebrew tradition wanting to know, where do I fit in to the genealogical scheme of things? That was very important, and it still is. But what is one of the things Rabbi Paul of Tarsus, what did he say? Don't spend your time or waste your time on genealogies trying to validate, well, I'm related to Josiah. Oh yeah, well, I'm related to Shealtiel. You know, well, prove it. Well, look at the genealogies. And now, well, I'm better than you because I'm related to this person and you're not related to this person. I'm related to Joshua, who is not in the genealogical line. And then this person says, well, I am related to Joshua. So then you get this debate about, well, who's better? Where's the pecking order? I'm a better person. I've got more authority because of my genealogy. Genealogy was very important. Understanding that on Matthew's genealogy, his genealogy follows Solomon, son of David. And Solomon was a king. Now, we know that David was both king and priest. He was both king and priest. That's why he could go before the Ark of the Covenant without a problem, because he was both king and priest. Solomon was a king. His brother, Nathan, was a priest, which is really fascinating. Because, yeah, so what's really fascinating when you think about this is you've got Yeshua is the son, the great son of Solomon, who was a king. What does that make Yeshua? He is in the kingly line. So if we were actually accurately following the genealogy and we're like, and we were totally unbiased and we were just following genealogy, we'd be going along going, okay, and then this guy, and then we have Joseph, Joseph's a carpenter, but he should be a king, and then he has a son, and his son is Yeshua. Well, Yeshua should be a king because he's in the kingly line clear back to David. And then you look at Luke, you look at Mary's line. Mary's line is Nathan. And so we realize, wait a minute, so Nathan was a high priest, and you look at all the high priests that have gone along, and here comes Yeshua, then he, by all rights, if we were totally arbitrary, we would just sit there and say, he should be next high priest, should be Yeshua. He has every right to the throne. He has every right to the Ark of the Covenant. He is both king and priest. I want to talk about Noah. Look at Noah. Noah was born 4,729 years ago. That would be 2705 BC. That was 1,056 years from the creation of Adam and Eve. 1,000, now listen to this. This is what we're going to go in here. I know this is a little tedious when we look at these calendars, we look at these dates, but it becomes very important because when you begin to follow the rabbit trail, you begin to follow the breadcrumbs, and you begin to get a perspective here. We have to realize 1,056 years after the creation of Adam and Eve is when the flood came, when Noah came. How many Jews or Arabs or Caucasians existed at this time? There wasn't any. There were people. Right. There was just people. There was no distinction. These were just people. There was zero distinction. You can't sit there and say, because I trace my existence back to Adam and Eve, me some privileged status. There was nobody for 1,056 years. There's just people. There is no religion. There is no Jewish religion. There is no Torah. None of that existed. Just people living. And unfortunately, it became a mess. And God said, that's it. I'm done. Noah, get in that boat, that ark, because I am going to renovate this earth, remove all the evil, and I'm going to start all over again with you. And so we end up with Noah. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I want to get a point across, and we're going to build on this point. There is no religion at this time. There is a man who knows Yahovah, who has a personal relationship. But that was a personal relationship. They talked. Now, interestingly enough, after the flood, he built an altar and he did a sacrifice. Even more interesting, didn't remember this, but you go back to Cain and Abel. Abel built an altar and did a blood sacrifice. But he wasn't following a liturgy. He wasn't following a religion. He was simply doing what he knew was the right thing to do. I want to worship Yahovah. And so he did it by taking something precious to him and sacrificing it because it was of value to him. And he built an altar. Noah built an altar and sacrificed. But it's very important for us to understand there is no distinction by race. There is no distinction by religion. Didn't exist. We're going to build on that. All right?